Hey Logo Geeks, it's Ian Paget here for another episode to help you make a living designing logos. As this is the first episode of the year, what better way than to start with a new podcast with a hero of mine. Someone who's been on the podcast once before at the very beginning, and someone who's influenced so many designers over the years too, and that is the amazing David Airey. Now, if you don't know David, he is the author of Logo Design Love, as well as other amazing publications like Work for Money, Design for Love, and Identity Designed, which are all incredible books and essential reading for your library. One of the main reasons I wanted to get David back on was because he has a new edition of his Logo Design Love book coming out a little later this year, should be within the next few months. And I wanted to find out more and support him, but also take the opportunity to catch up. Now, in addition to this interview, later this week, so on the 15th of January 2026 at 7 p.m. GMT, David will also be joining me for a Geek Out session in More Creative Academy. And that's one that I'm really excited for, as in this interview that I'm sharing today, David shares with us how he's now charging between £10,000 to £20,000 for a logo project, and share how he's gradually grown towards that. And then in the MCA session, he's kindly agreed to show us live how he now presents. Now, I know this will be gold dust for anyone into logo design, so I do hope that you can be part of that, as well as take advantage of all the other amazing stuff in More Creative Academy that Michael Jander provides. Now, this is perfect if you are a goal-driven creative like me and you want to make the most of 2026. I do hope that you can become part of that. And if you do, just head to logogeek.uk/MCA. Anyway, enough from me. Let's dive straight into this discussion. Here is the interview with David Airey. Hi, David. So it's fantastic to have you back on the podcast. It's been, it's been about 7 or 8 years since we since you was last a guest on this podcast. You was one of my very first guests. And since it's been so long, and because you've got a new edition of your book coming out early next year, I thought this would be a great opportunity to have you on to catch up and to talk a little bit about your book. So thank you for coming back on.
It's a pleasure, Ian. It's great to be chatting with you as always.
And with video this time as well. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the questions that I have. Your book, your Logo Design Love, came out a long time ago. It's actually one of my first logo design books when I first got into graphic design. Maybe how long ago was it? Maybe 20 years ago.
An age.
So how did the book first come about? So how did Logo Design Love come into the world originally?
I don't know if you were familiar with the personal blog that I had before Logo Design Love.
I was, yeah.
DavidAirey.com was the
back
main
then
name.
There was barely anything about logo design online. There was you and maybe Jacob Cass, but there wasn't nothing like what there is now.
Yeah, it was a different time. I had the personal blog, and I spoke about a variety of things, creativity related. It wasn't solely logos. There would be a list of categories down the side of the page. There'd be dealing with clients. There'd be marketing. There'd be art, architecture, a whole raft of things. So it wasn't solely logos, but that's what I enjoyed designing the most. And it seemed like a natural kind of progression to start a different blog, on its own domain, and get logo design in the domain to help with search engine rankings. And I started that in 2008. I went into self-employment in 2005. So for a couple of years, I'd been publishing blog posts on my personal blog, and then I wanted something logo specific because that's what I enjoyed. So Logo Design Love, the website, came into the world, and after about a year of publishing that, I got an email out of the blue from a publisher in the States, and the acquisitions editor there was Nikki McDonald, and she asked if I'd be interested in writing a book with Peach Pit, which was a subdivision of Pearson. And I hadn't been thinking about writing a book, but yeah, I thought, why not? And this is what the first edition looked like. The white
For anyone that's listening just to the audio, David's sharing the first edition of his book.
Yeah, it's at the time I thought, yeah, this is great. I wasn't expecting to be an author, and working with a publisher was an eye opener too. You know, whenever I was submitting the chapters for copy editing, they were coming back with red marks everywhere. So I wasn't great at writing, but that was one of the advantages of working with a publisher, was that it taught me how to edit better. And it also made me appreciate that I'm not as good at this as I thought I might be. And there was about 50% of the content was my work, and about 50% was designers from around the world that I'd asked if they would contribute their work, because I didn't just want it to be about me. You know, I was a young designer with not a lot of experience, and I wanted to bring on board the experience that other people could add to the book to make it a bit more valuable for the readers. That's that's how the book came about. It's just that email out of the blue from Nikki at Peach Pit.
It's kind of wild because the books become really successful. I don't know what the sales are like or anything like that, but I think anyone I know that's into logo design in any capacity, they all know you. They all know your book. So it's really made a massive impact on the world.
It's a hard one for me to kind of quantify the sales figures. I don't know specifics. The English version of the book, I think, might have sold around 50,000.
That's wild. That's wild numbers. When you think it's, you know, very focused on logo design, I think that's incredible. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to release a new edition? I believe it's the third edition, if I'm right.
It will be the third edition. Yes, the second edition was published in 2014, and this third edition has come about due to my publisher more than anything, because I got an email at the start of this year, so about 9 or 10 months ago, and it mentioned that the book still sells. The second edition still sells, despite being, you know, more than 10 years old, and there was a need for a new print run. And what was either going to happen was the paper quality was going to be reduced in order to improve their profit margins, because while it still sold, it didn't sell anywhere near as well as it did when it was first launched. It was either the paper quality was going to be reduced, or the rights for the book would have been reverted to me and they would have taken it out of print. So then I could have self-published it if I wanted, or perhaps taken it to another publisher. But if I was self-publishing it, then I would be responsible for the printing, the sales, and the distribution. You'll know that well with your own book.
It's not as easy to sell tens of thousands when you're doing it all yourself. It's fun. I really enjoyed it, but it's a lot of work. And I think if I do any more books, I would be working with a publisher, just because you leave the responsibility of the production and everything with them, and I feel they do a better quality as well.
That's my thinking too. I didn't want to take everything on board, or not take everything on board. I didn't want to be responsible for everything to do with the getting it out there. I like the writing aspect, and I like learning from the designers who contributed. And a third edition kind of felt right, because 14, you know, like I said, more than 10 years. We're always learning, and I've learned a lot, and the quality of my work has improved in that time. And the fact that the book was still selling, it's a reflection on where I am today. You know, people are picking it up today, and I didn't want them to be looking at my work and thinking, this is what I'm going to get to. Now, don't get me wrong, there are projects that I look at that I've done that far back and they've stood the test of time, but at the same time, there are other ones that I look at and I think, no, I'd change that. I wouldn't do that. I think that's natural with any designer, really. It can sometimes only take a couple of years before you're already
Well,
thinking,
yeah,
no,
I think that's normal, and that should hopefully be the case. I think worst case scenario for a graphic designer, if you did work 10, 15 years ago, and you're thinking, oh, that's the best work I ever did, and you haven't come any further, then
yeah.
you're not really growing. But if you are looking back that far, and there's stuff in there that could be better, then you've obviously grown and come a long way as a graphic designer, and it sounds like that's the case. I know when I look at your website, everything looks so much slicker than it did, and it's funny really thinking that, because um, you've always been one of the people that I've looked up to and admired, um, and even your early website and early work, that was something that I admired even back then, and now it is on another level, and I can see that you've grown and come a long way as a graphic designer and an author as well.
Thank you very much, Ian. I appreciate that. It doesn't come as a result of just me and my own initiative. There are other designers out there that I look up to myself, and I take inspiration from other websites and try and factor that into my work, how it's laid out, keeping it simple, and just trying to elevate each project as I go along. But I look back at the last project that I've done, and that's what I measure my newest projects on, is just look to the past, make it a little bit better, and gradually over the years, then that's where the improvement comes from.
Sure. So, big question everyone's going to have. So, what's new in the book? What's changed since the second edition? I mean, I would be honest, David. I don't have the second edition. I've still got my first edition. So this third edition, I would definitely be picking up a copy once it comes out. But what's new in this in this edition?
Well, I'll be more than happy to send you a copy, Ian.
Thank you. Very
let me
kind.
do that. A publisher typically expects about 25% of the content to change from one edition to the next. I think for this edition, it'll be closer to 40 or 50. The chapters, there are 12 chapters in the second edition, and they're going to remain pretty much intact in terms of the topic, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. It is a successful book, and there's still value in there. So there'll definitely be similarities, but a lot of the content is being rewritten, and if not slightly tweaked. So my aim with it is to make it more timeless, more actionable for the reader, and also leaving room for people to adapt what I say, so they can work how they prefer to work. I don't want to be dictating, do this, do that. It's more a case of, this is how I've done it. This is how I've been successful over 20 years as an independent designer. And also, this is how other people have done it with more experience than me. And so there's going to be dozens of new examples from from contemporary designers. There'll be updated visuals throughout. There'll be some new sections on building trust, and there'll be a Q&A about artificial intelligence. I'll talk about client dynamics, negotiation, and really a cleaner structure overall. So it's designed to read kind of more fluidly than specific to any particular technology or app. That goes back to the timeless nature that I'm trying to get to.
Sure. It sounds really good. And in terms of like the look and size of it, is it more based on the pictures that I've seen, it looks like it's the same sort of size and style as your other books as well. Is that the case?
It's going to be the same dimensions as
Okay.
the second edition.
Okay.
So it's, what is it? It's 9 by 7 inches, I think.
Sure. Okay.
It's going to be a paperback. My previous two books with
Rockport,
yeah, the name escaped me.
it's all right.
My previous two books, they've been hardback, but this one's going to be paperback. And I was asking my publisher about that. Could it be a hardback? But due to cost reasons, and also I understood there when they explained it about how it would be more accessible to the educational market. If you imagine colleges and design courses around the world buying textbooks, that type of thing. Well, yeah, it'll just be a bit more cheaper for design students as well. So yeah, it's going to be a paperback, but it's still going to be good quality. And that's one of the things that I was very keen to avoid with when my publisher first approached me and said we might be reducing the paper quality if we're doing another print run on this. Is that okay with you? And no, I didn't want that. I would have taken the rights back rather than reduce the paper quality, because as a designer, you know, it matters how it feels.
Yeah, I understand that, because I know when I did mine, one of the reasons why I didn't want to do the print on demand route initially
Mm-hmm.
was because of the quality. But you just can't do you when you do self-publishing, you can't do it in the way that you are with a publisher. Like a publisher can actually print tens of thousands on really nice paper stock and stuff like that, and keep the cost low and affordable, and to be able to reach more people and so on. So I have a lot of like, I really appreciate that you've done that, because I think the worst thing that you want really is when you buy a graphic design book for it to be poor quality.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah,
Graphic
absolutely.
designers, we like our paper, so
Yeah, the feel of it, you know, it's something tangible because we spend so much time looking at a screen. It's just nice to,
yeah, it's nice to feel nice paper.
yeah.
I want to ask you about the cover, or the actual graphic design of the whole book, if you're willing to share. But I noticed on your, I think it was on your X or your Twitter, that you shared some of the different examples of covers that you was experimenting with, and you did maybe like 20 different options. Do you want to talk a little bit about that process? Because I know people don't judge a book by its cover, but they really do.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
They
Yeah,
shouldn't,
people
but
do.
people do.
Yeah. The first edition was white with the black text. The second edition was black with white text. And then I thought to myself, well, what am I going to do now? So I thought, okay, grey with white text. And I pitched that to my publisher. I'd put it on social media before showing it to my publisher, which in hindsight I shouldn't have done, because my publisher came back to me. There's a small team of 3 or 4 people that have been giving me great feedback, and they were concerned that it wouldn't stand out as well as it should. Well, you imagine you're shopping on Amazon, for example, and it's a white background, and then you've got the gallery of all the different cover images, and there's bright colors on there. That's one of the reasons why I went black covers with my more recent books. But I thought that I should make this one different, not black again. But it turns out that when I put those different designs together and shared them with the publisher, there was one that stood out to them. They were kind of unanimous on it. And I was also keen on it as well. It was black with bold, white, heavy set, all caps, logo design of type down one side, and then Neue Haas Grotesque for the tagline at the top, and the space on the other side. The tagline slightly tweaked from this edition, or from the last edition. The last edition was a guide to creating iconic brand identities, but this one's like a guide to creating iconic brand marks, because logos are the focus. So in hindsight, I wouldn't have named the previous edition with brand identities, because there's a bit about the broader brand identity at the end of the book, but really it's about the logo, and that's where I wanted the focus to be. So it's about brand marks, and I shared those options with my publisher. They were happy with it. I was happy with it, and I think it's ultimately a lot stronger than the grey idea that I had. The grey one was very similar, but just grey with white text rather than black, so it'll stand out a bit more, and it also fits with my other books. So
It does. It does. You know, I see it, and it just looks so much slicker than the first edition I've got. And like I said, I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but it just looks so much better, so much like it's gone up market, which is the same for your website, for all of your work. It feels more relevant to where you are personally now, much more established. I really like that you've made it a lot more evergreen. And yeah, uh, I have no doubt it's going to be successful once again, because the first and second edition have been, and as I've always said, everyone knows you, David. Everyone knows your books. Anyone that's into graphic design or logo design, they know you, or at least if they don't, like if people are watching or listening to this now and they don't know you, hopefully they go and check out your website and check out your work and obviously buy your book and all of your other books as well, because you're an established writer now, established designer. I think it's awesome.
Thank you very much, Ian. Just one small point about the cover as well. You mentioned looking back to the first edition. I obviously had that red heart on there, and then that carried through to the second edition. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'd been looking at it for so long, but it was just the heart shape and having love in the title. It felt a bit much, a bit of an overload. So the publisher asked, is there a way to keep that red aspect to it? And I thought, okay, well, I'll put those 3 little circles on there, small circles in a row, slightly touching. And the third one is red. The first 2 kind of represent the first and second editions. So there's the red one, this is the third edition. And I think what I'll do after the book is published, or when I have a bit more time, is I'll change the branding, for the website, and I'll use those 3 circles in social media, and I'll use that same type style for the brand name and the blocky text all in a row. So yeah, I want to overhaul the website as well. I haven't been doing much on there at all for well, a couple of years now, maybe.
Well, it all takes time, and you've got a family and a life. I know all too well. Like it's really hard as a graphic designer to keep your website updated, and it's even harder when it's things that don't immediately bring in an income. So things like client work, portfolio, and stuff like that. You can justify updating something like a portfolio because if your work's improved or you're wanting to attract a certain type of audience or whatever, that's justifiable because there's an immediate income with it. But when it's something like a blog or something like that, it does eventually bring in extra income. Like more people come to visit it, and it's a more consistent look and feel, and it changes people's perception about you and this, that, and the other. But because it doesn't immediately bring in money, it's really, really hard to focus on anything like that. So you and any designer listening, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You have to be realistic with time.
Yes, definitely. That's great advice, is not to put too much pressure on yourself, because we're all exposed to so many other designers around the world, and they're all putting out excellent work that we kind of aspire to emulate in some way. And when you see this over and over and over, it can easily make you feel like you're not doing enough. But as long as you're making a comfortable living, you don't need to always be putting out new content. And my portfolio, you mentioned portfolio there, that's something that I really should update it, because the last time I uploaded a new project was maybe a couple of years ago, and I've been working with a number of different clients since then. So it's important to keep your portfolio fresh. That's the one thing that we kind of...
Yeah, I agree. That's one thing that you should ideally update if you can. Even if it's like I like to at least do a couple of new case studies a year, even if it's just 2 or 3, just to try and keep things fresh and make sure that work that's on there is as best as it can be. But it's really easy to put things to one side. And on your point about I know I said it originally about not putting too much pressure on yourself, but I know something that I found. So for anyone that's listened to this podcast frequently, there was a period of time over several years where I released an episode every week, and I was pretty committed to that. But I decided to take the focus away from that and focus on my little one and making enough income. But it's amazing how I feel the pressure when I'm not putting stuff out. Like I feel like I'm not doing enough, or it's hard and challenging to not feel that you need to do that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I think it's really important to know what your priorities are. And in my case, at that point in my life, because my daughter, she's 6 now, so she's a bit older. But it was important to me that I prioritize that over my work. Sadly, things like creating podcasts, posting on social media multiple times a day, doing all this, that, and the other, that's stuff that, okay, it does bring in value long term, because it builds your brand, establishes trust. Like, there's loads of benefits to doing stuff like what we're doing now. But in the immediate short term, it doesn't always bring in an income unless you've got like a sponsor or whatever.
Yeah.
So it can be really difficult to prioritize things like that. But my point is, I think as designers, it is easy to look out into the world and think, oh, they're doing this, that's really cool what they're doing, oh, they're putting out so much work. But people are in at different points of their life. I'm 20 years into my career now, which kind of scares me. But I've also got like enough work online and enough of a presence online to attract clients to bring that in. So I can focus on doing my work and focus on spending time with my daughter and less on the social media. But I want to get back to it because I enjoy it. I love it. That's exactly why I'm back doing this. And also because now my daughter's 6, now I can, and she's at school and stuff like that, I can justify the time and get back into that routine. And that's why I'm back doing this podcast again.
And yeah, it's great to have you back, Ian, because you had a very successful podcast and I enjoyed the episodes that you put out, and I was honored to be a guest on there.
Well, you're back again. One of a few guests that have been on here twice. I want to go back to talking about the books. If there was one lesson that you've added in since the last edition that stood out, what would that be? And I know you mentioned that you've added in this new section on building trust, so I assume it might be that, but if it's different, let me know.
Well, it's probably a topic that more designers would be interested in, and that's something that I've touched on in the first and second editions, which is talking about money early with your clients to avoid wasting time on both sides. Now, as I've mentioned them before, but with this new edition, I'm more confident about how I handle pricing. I still question myself sometimes, but I know that there are those that say when you're approached by a potential client, you need to find out the business revenue before giving a price. And if you don't, you're leaving money on the table. And you need to ask questions to determine like the annual spending and then kind of factor in the 10% that they might typically spend on marketing. And that 10% gives you a basis from which you can tailor your proposal. That's something that it's never sat quite right with me, and I can understand why people do it that way, but in terms of how I would handle that at the start of a client engagement, it would be I'd explain the price range that I generally charge. So I would say something like, and this is generally in an email because most of my new inquiries come by email, and then I'll reply and I'll say something along the lines of, past clients have typically valued my work in the region of 10,000 to 25,000. The soonest I could start will be this date, which is usually a few weeks down the line, and then I'll include a link to my standard terms. And yeah, there might be some people that would say, well, if you're giving this range and they're expecting to pay more, then you are selling yourself short. But it's more often the case that I'm giving this range and the person that I'm dealing with can't afford what I typically charge. So it saves a lot of time for both parties. And if we are a good fit, then great. And it's not a case of I'm only going to work on projects that are within that. If a client is doing something that I see the value in, that I could recommend to other people, then I would be willing to work for less. Or sometimes I do work for friends and family. It could be £1,000, it could be £5,000, and it could be you give me this and I'll give you this. There could be an exchange of services. often I have that price range where I know that I'm adding value to the client, and Blair Enns, win without pitching, and the win without pitching author Blair Enns, he has this saying where what you want to end up with is a double thank you. So you're thanking your client because you're happy with what you've earned. You feel you've justified, they're paying you what you're worth, and they're happy too. They're thanking you because they see the value in what you do. So both parties at the end of it are getting good value. They're happy with how it ends. And I never want it to be the case where I've charged something and it's got to the stage where there's more revisions than I was catering to, and I get an email or a phone call from a client and I'm thinking, oh, what is it this time? So I never want to be charging too little. But at the same time, if there's value for both parties and you can earn a comfortable living and you're not having to worry about getting the bills paid at the end of the month, and you're helping to raise a family and they're not worried, and there's a stress-free environment and you're enjoying the work, which I have done throughout the 20 years. I love what I do, and people think that you can love it too much so that you don't get what you're worth. But I always figure out some way where I'm happy at the end, the client's happy at the end. Well, there's always an exception. For every 10 projects that I do, there might be one that doesn't quite work out the way I hadn't expected or hoped. But that's normal too, and you figure these things out as you go. Your client, I think it was Michael Beirut who once said, your clients are my clients. He deals with the issues that we deal with. There'll be clients who want to have a much bigger say in how things are designed, and you've got to balance that control, whether you need to set expectations about, you can give me feedback this way, but don't tell me to inch this thing a couple of millimeters to the left. That's my job. You're paying me for that. I don't want you to feel shortchanged. So I would say that in this new edition, I'm more confident about pricing. So the lessons in there will be more relevant to my level today than they were more than 10 years ago.
I'm looking forward to reading that, because that's quite, it's really nice to hear that, because I've heard lots of different models on pricing. Like Blair Enns has excellent advice. Like his I think his Pricing Creativity book is brilliant, and it does have logo design specific stuff within that book as well. But there is so much mixed advice online in the graphic design circle, where some are doing fixed pricing. I personally do fixed pricing. Like, that works for me. I know that if I get X number of projects a month, I'm fine, and I tend to aim towards this particular sort of size of company and this and the other, and I do what works for me, so I don't stress too much about the advice I hear online. If it works for me, I'm happy. But it's nice to hear how yours. I don't know how best to describe this, but it's almost like you're still doing value-based pricing, but you're not going to the effort of needing to understand and ask all the awkward questions that do feel comfortable. Because I know, if a client calls and you're asking about their revenue and this, that, and the other, I know people don't like that. I don't like that myself. I'm not going to give the actual information, because I'm going to feel like, well, you're just going to rip me off if I say, we're a multi-billion-dollar company or something like that. So I sort of feel the same with you, that it doesn't feel right. But it's nice how you go in with, usually my clients value me at this, which is, I think, is a really nice way of doing it.
Yeah, we have a similar outlook there. I don't want a client to be thinking that I'm just fishing to get the most out of them that I can. It's not the case at all. I know what I'm worth from kind of a market viewpoint, and what's interesting is that I once asked a client actually, had been doing some research on me before getting in touch, and they had asked ChatGPT what they could expect me to charge them. It was pretty much spot on, to the extent where I thought, are my emails being read? But then I thought about it a bit more. Probably just a case of there's a general range that designers who have a certain level of experience will charge, and I guess I fit in with what the range tends to be.
So I want to briefly pause the interview to share with you a little more about More Creative Academy, which is a thriving community for designers, freelancers, and agency owners, where you gain access to mentorship from Michael Janda and gain access to a wealth of resources. As part of MCA, I do a live monthly Geek Out session, with the next being with today's guest, David Airey, where he's kindly agreed to show us how he presents his work to clients. It's something I'm very excited for, and I know it will be like gold dust for those of us serious about a career in logo design. With it being a new year, it's the best time to be more goal-focused, knuckle down, and start to get serious about your dreams. And I know that More Creative Academy can give you the support you need. To learn more and join, head to logogeek.uk/MCA. Now let's get back to the interview. I'm curious to ask, sorry to put focus on this. So in terms of that range, I'm gonna ask this from my perspective, and hopefully people will relate with this. So I'm primarily self-taught. I don't have any qualifications in what I'm doing, but I have been lucky enough to work with places like Cambridge University and Imperial College. I find that wild when I'm self-taught. But I've gone, if you can imagine, when I started out, I was maybe charging like £50 to £100 because I didn't know what I was doing. If somebody wanted something, it's like, I don't know, I was just throwing out a number that, again, I was happy with because it was, I was kind of practicing, I was kind of learning. And I've developed slowly. And an issue that I have, and I'm asking this for the sake of the audience because I would like to think that some of them will relate with this. I have a mental block in my head where that sounds too expensive. And I feel it's almost like I don't value the work that I do above a certain price range, because it's like, why would anyone pay like £10,000 for me, my perception of you, like you like logo design love, it's about 20 years old now. That book's globally recognized. You've released all these other books since. You are established. Like if you search on Google for like logo designers, you're one of the recommended ones. Like one of the, alongside like people like Paul Rand. When you search logo designers, you are one of the people that it will put there. So like my perception of you is like, yeah, that makes sense, but it's quite difficult for people that are starting out, and I feel people that are established. Like even where I am now, again, work from home, outside of work, I'm just trying to look after my daughter, and I have to wake her up early, drag her out. This I don't know what I'm saying here, but I struggle to go above a certain price range. Like I still feel now I would struggle to even say like £5,000, and something like £10,000 to £20,000 just for a logo. That sounds, when it's just an independent, I'm working from home. I'm literally working in my bedroom almost. It's quite daunting to throw out figures like that. From your career, so over the past 20 years, or it's probably longer for you, how have you gone from, I don't know what you would have been charging at the beginning, to being comfortable to throw out numbers like £10,000 to £20,000 just for a logo?
It's gradual, And what makes a big difference is having enough in the bank that means I don't need to worry too much if I lose this potential inquiry.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
If I'm busy enough and I'm getting a lot of inquiries, then it's easier to raise the rates, and because yes, you might lose more, but when you get those ones that do pay you more money, you can spend more time on it. The quality of your work improves, the quality of your portfolio improves, and then it just becomes a little bit easier for you to justify that this is what I'm charging now. And then that in turn makes it easier for clients to trust that they're hiring the right person, because even though most of my clients aren't designers themselves, some might be designers, interior designers or architects, that type of thing. But even though most aren't and they don't have any design training, they'll still have an idea of what good design looks like. You show them two packages, one side by side. The one that's designed better will be the one that they think, yeah, I'd pay more money for that. So they're comparing your portfolio to a raft of others that they're looking at. If yours has that extra level of quality that you're able to achieve by charging more and spending more time on an individual project, then they're going to choose you. They're going to be happier to choose you. They're going to be happier to pay what you think you're worth. And now I know you went back to the point that you don't think that you should be charging that amount, but that goes back to what I said. If you've been able to save enough that you're not worried about where the next bill is getting paid, and you can afford to lose out on some inquiries if they can't afford you, then the level of inquiry, the level of potential inquiries that you're getting, and if you just gradually over time put up your rates, it's not been a case for me. I started out very similar to you. It would be in the hundreds, and I think that would be the case for pretty much anyone. Over time, you get better, and you spend, as designers, we look at details that most people don't really notice. We have such a kind of, we care for our craft and we want things to be perfect. So I might be fixating over a couple of anchor points for an hour or two. Mm-hmm. And if I showed the difference to the client, they're not going to notice, but I notice. And by spending that extra time, it elevates your work just marginally over and over and over. So when you're in the field for a couple of decades, then as your work increases in quality, your pricing goes up. It's a ladder, little by little by little. And yes, there are often times whenever I put those prices to people, they'll get in touch with me and they'll say no. There was one time I remember from maybe 10 years ago when I might have said £5,000 to somebody, and they flat out said your work is nowhere near that good, and that's fair enough. It happens. People don't value design in the same way that other people do.
I sorry to interrupt. I had that even when I charged a few £100. Like, people were like, "Your work's not worth charging." It's funny, actually. The higher I've gone, the less of that I get, which I find interesting.
Yeah, well, that is interesting. People value your work the way they see it. So what you really need to do is make sure that enough people are seeing it, and you give yourself a better chance of attracting the kind of client that you want. Now, I haven't been as active on social media for the past few years, more because, well, there's the family thing. I've got two young kids, Scarlett's 11 and Isaac's 8. And there's also being a designer for 20 years now. I love it, but I have other interests. I don't want design to be everything. There's the family, there's the design, and then there's other interests. So it's spending less time working, and as a designer, a lot of our time is sat at a screen. We spend enough time as it is looking at screens. So
Sorry to interrupt here, but I think something that I find you've been doing this longer than I have, but something that I've noticed now, I'm maybe at least 10 years plus into the logo geek journey. I had to do the grind at the beginning. Like I had to put in the time. I had to be posting on socials daily. I had to be everywhere. I put myself out there in every possible scenario, partly to build up confidence, but also to sort of establish myself. And I found since I have sort of stepped away to focus on my daughter, and that's just been like that hasn't been like a choice because I don't like doing the work. It's just, from a practicality point of view, I just haven't had as much time, and I've just been realistic with that. But something that I find with people that have been doing it a long time, like you're a great example of this. You don't need to be posting on social media every day for people to find you. You have an established website, you have established books. Like you could probably disappear off the internet for 5 years and people will still get in touch and still find you. And I think that's the main difference here, is that you're not a new face. You're somebody that's established. So you can also get away with doing that. You've got the freedom to do that, and you've earned that freedom. And also, I know I've spoken to friends about this a few times. People that you put up here, that you put on a pedestal, so people like Sagi Haviv, Tom Geismar, Michael Beirut, Paula Scher, they aren't sitting on Facebook or X or Behance all day long. You don't see them doing any of that. You see them doing the very focused things. They're busy working. When they do any social media kind of thing, it's the big stuff. It's not any little nitty gritty thing that people are doing daily. And I think to some extent, when you do get to a certain point, I think there's a benefit to not being out there so much and not being so accessible, because it adds to the value of your time and how people see you. But if you're new, you have to do the grunt work. You have to put in the time. You have to be on the social media. You have to be putting out your name. You have to be writing lots, and make that footprint. But you've got that footprint, and I think you've earned the right to have a bit more time and enjoy the time with the kids. Because why do we work? Like, what is all this for if it isn't for having a bit more time and being able to do the hobbies you want to be doing?
Yeah, well said. Well said. What do we do it for? And yes,
I do it for my daughter, so I can have time with her, which it kind of annoys me that I feel bad sometimes that I'm not online. But this is, I'm doing what I want to do. I can always collect my daughter on time and be there at the front of the queue. Mm-hmm. And that's there's no client, nobody can take that away from me. Like, if a client wants a quote, it's like, no, we do that tomorrow. If they have an issue with it, it's like, well, that's your problem. It's not mine. Like, they can do and say whatever they want. Like, that's one thing that being self-employed gives you the freedom to do, is that you can make hard, firm rules on certain things. And one of mine is making sure that I'm at the front of the queue when I collect my daughter.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love that.
I want to go back to something that we was talking about. So, and again, sorry to put focus on this. I just know that people will find it interesting. So you're charging quite a high amount, and I think a lot of people aspire for that. And you shared a lot of advice already. Since you first released Logo Design Love, almost 20 years ago now, what have you done differently in order to feel that you're able to charge that amount? Is it just a case that you've improved as a designer, or have you physically changed any approach to it, or any like are you presenting in a different way, or is there something that you're doing to make it feel like it's worth more?
It is gradual. There are small changes along the way that it's hard to pinpoint just one thing, because definitely my presentation style has improved. When I look at some of the early PDFs that I was sending clients, from 15, 20 years ago, and I compare that to what I'm doing today, I know that a client wouldn't be happy. if I was charging what I charge now to receive what I was sending back then. So a large part of that is also the fact that I have the published books, so clients are going to straight away, they're going to have a level of trust that I know what I'm doing that they wouldn't have had before I was established in that way. So yes, you're absolutely right. I don't need to be spending as much time on social media now. And I was similar to you. I would be, well, grinding for want of a better word, but I didn't see it like that. When I first became self-employed, I saw sleep as a kind of distraction from work. I didn't want to be going to bed at night because I loved it so much that I wanted to be spending all my time doing this. Now, I still love it, but I have a different viewpoint now. I know that a good sleep is going to improve the work that I do, whereas in the past I wouldn't have thought that. I would have thought, okay, a few hours in bed and then right, let's get back to the designing. It's been gradual, yeah. To answer your question in a short way, over time, you get better, and clients can see that in the quality of your work, so they have a bit more trust in you. Yeah, they need to be able to trust you. They're paying you before you do any work for them, so there needs to be trust there. And if you can show that you're trustworthy through the quality of your portfolio, and back that up with, whenever they'll be looking on social media, back that up with a genuine interest in what you're doing. And that might involve a side project. Like for you, it was your podcast. That would be massive for a potential client, seeing that you've interviewed all these design specialists all over the world. It might be a case of, well, for me, it started with kind of Logo Design Love, that separate blog from my portfolio where I showed people that I had a genuine interest in what I was doing. And at the same time, that website was valuable for other designers because I would interview people like Tom Geismar and Sagi Haviv, and I would bring the odd guest author in to write about what they knew. And at the same time, looking back to those early Logo Design Love days, some of the blog posts were much more negative than anything that I would put out today. There's one post, I don't know if you remember this or if you ever saw it. It was I'd found out that somebody had been ripping off my work. Exactly. They'd been using the images from my website and then they'd be putting it on their portfolio. The guy's name was, I can remember it, even though it was like 18, 19 years ago. His name's Matt Earnshaw. So I published a blog post on Logo Design Love. The headline was, "Don't hire Matt Earnshaw." And I just went into this. This is what he's done. Don't trust him, type of thing. Next day or within a few days, if you type in Google for Matt Earnshaw, that would be the first result. So I started thinking, oh, well, he's not the only Matt Earnshaw out there. So I took it down shortly after. And then eventually that blog post disappeared from the search rankings. But that was one example of things that, yeah, I avoid that negativity. I know that it's not easy being a designer when not everyone, but a lot of people like to have an opinion on your work. And it's more often than not, it's an uninformed opinion. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes with your client. They don't know what directions you presented and how that might have been, tweaked by a committee. So I keep things as positive as I can. I wouldn't publish another blog post, for example, like when the London 2012 logo came out, and a Logo Design Love blog post was London 2012 logo disaster, and that was kind of. Yeah, the Wolf Ollens was the agency, the studio. There would have been a lot of designers that spent weeks, months, perhaps even years working on that, and then me just tearing it to shreds in a blog post that got quite a lot of comments. I think there might have been a couple of hundred comments on it. So the blog was popular, a lot more popular than it is now. And if I was going back, I'd keep things much more positive. It wouldn't have got the rage bait clicks that it might have back then, but yeah, I like to keep things as positive as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because like as graphic designers, we if we put out work, we don't want negative comments. And again, because you can work for months on a project and you finally pluck up the courage to put it out there. The worst thing you want is negative feedback. And I find it awful when so many designers just share such negative feedback about certain projects. And can you imagine how the designer feels that they finally got their big break where they get to work on some established company, and then the response is, "This is awful. I could do better." And then you get some redesign, fixing this logo thing that comes out or whatever. Loads of people are doing that kind of thing immediately after something's being done, and I just think I just think it's horrible. So I'm in the same mindset that um if I'm going to speak about something, it's more to share that this has happened, that somebody's done this, and this is something that they worked on. So it's almost like I'm like if I share something on X or Twitter, I'm sharing it almost like it's a news feed. I try not to give a negative comment. If I really love it, I will say that I love it, but I'm not going to add the hate and hostility online that can happen around logo design. And I think it's really nice that you are that you've sort of gone down a route now of wanting to push people up, then drag them down, which is admirable. So we're sort of coming up. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So we're coming up to the we've got maybe like 10 minutes or so left on this call. There's one area of design that's changed significantly over the last year or two that I'd like your input on or thoughts on is AI. So when AI first came out, logo designs on that were pretty terrible. Well, they were horrifically bad. These tools are improving, and it is still, in my opinion, horrifically bad. But I personally feel that AI is getting to the point where it could do work just as good as any established graphic designer. What's your take on AI? Like, have you used it? Do you use it in any of your workflow? Do you feel that it's a good thing or a bad thing? Or what's your take on these emerging tools that are rapidly coming out?
Well, you said it there, an emerging tool. I would see it as a tool that we could use, and whether it's good or bad. I am more positive about the design profession with regards to AI than I am about society in general. Looking at the design profession in particular, there was a report from D&AD, the awards, the D&AD awards. They published a trend report recently, and there were a couple of quotes in there that stood out. I think I shared them on a social account recently. I'll pull them up. I've got one here, or I've got them both here actually. Sure. Let me just read directly because I think it's worth it. One is from Pum Lefebvre of Design Army. I hope I pronounced her name right. She said, "AI is already here, so we are all going to use it, and it's going to get to the point that everyone can design using AI. So as a designer, you'll have to force yourself to be more human than ever before." And along similar lines, another quote from the report was by Joanna Rocca of Koto. And she said about the awards entries, both of these designers were jury presidents in the D&AD Awards. And she said there was a lot of work that used generative AI. And by that, she was referring to a lot of work that was submitted into the awards. And she said that was to be expected. But that alone didn't make it better. It may have helped teams work faster or more efficiently, but what made the best work stand out was still the thinking, the originality, and the craft. The tools were secondary to the idea. And that's kind of sums up my thinking on it. It's a tool. And yes, we're all using it to some extent, or if we're not, we probably will be. It can help speed up our workflows. But none of us as designers, we don't want to be hired to be typing prompts, into some tool. We still want to be doing the work. We don't want to be destroying our profession. And if you imagine a client, some of the feedback that you might have got from your clients over the years, you wouldn't have always agreed with it. It's still the case today with some of the clients I have. Okay, I might not agree with it. And yes, I can show you what your feedback might make a design look like, but here is how I think it's better and why. And if you imagine a client, instead of hiring a designer, they go to a tool and they type in what they're looking for, and they type in their company background and they say, design me a logo or design me 10 logos. And then they choose one. I've found over the years that the more designs I create for a client, the harder it gets for them to choose the right one or the strongest one. And also, if there's a bad one in the mix, if there are 9 great designs and 1 bad one, the odds of that bad one being chosen, they're not 1 in 10. It might be, it could be 1 in 5. It's a Sod's law, or there's a different name for the law in the States. I use AI to gather thoughts sometimes. I find that it helps if I'm doing research on a client, because it can only take a microsecond for it to pull information from journals and newspaper reports and all over. That could be research that might have taken me days otherwise. So I like to get summaries of long form articles. Now, I wouldn't always trust that I'm getting the right information because it's not perfect. But it has helped me to an extent. I'm never going to use it to create a design because that's the job that I'm being hired for. If a client wants to use these tools for themselves, then they're not the right client for me anyway. And would they have hired me in the first place? Perhaps not. So I see it as a tool. I'm more positive about it from a design viewpoint because, as I said, it can speed things up. It can help in certain ways, but I'm not going to supplant my own skills. I'm not going to turn to an AI tool when I want to do the work myself. I want to be sketching. I want to be playing around with these anchor points, and I want to be coming up with the ideas. That I'm being hired for my ideas, and if there's something else that can do those ideas for a client, then a client's going to go to them. And until that point, I'll keep doing what I'm doing and enjoying every minute of it.
I really, really love that take, and it's a nice angle for it, because I know some people are very scared of the future of graphic design, but I think those quotes that you shared and just the general outlook to it, I'm in agreement with it, and it's just nice to hear. And yeah. So David, you shared so much advice in this. I know, as always, I could ask you another 100 questions and speak for hours, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I think you've given a lot of value in this session. So I'm going to wrap it up here. But David, thank you so much for your time. Just one last question I do have. Your book, the 3rd edition of Logo Design Love, when does it come out, and where can people buy it?
I'm about 75% of the way through, maybe 80%. And the final deadline that I have with my publisher, I have to hand in 100% of the content by the end of November. And then there'll be about a week whenever the copy editor will make potential changes. I'll get that back. Ideally, if all goes to plan, it'll be published January or February 2026. And usual places, through the publisher Peach Pit, which is part of Pearson, or Amazon, or if you can, go to a local bookstore and ask them to order it for you. And you will, if you want to, know exactly when it's coming out, or if you want to get a free copy, I'll be giving away some of the free copies, because my publisher will send me a box of them whenever they're ready. I don't need any more than one, so I'll be giving some away through my newsletter, which is davidairey.substack.com, free newsletter where I publish every month or two some design resources and things that I'm interested in. Yeah, thanks for asking, and thanks for having me.
I'll make sure to link to all of that in the show notes or the description of this video if you're watching that. But Dave, it's been amazing to speak with you again. Really great to hear how that you continue to be successful. It's been nice because like I said at the beginning, you have always stood out to me as somebody that I've idolized. Like when I was a new designer, you're somebody I looked up to. And it's just nice to be able to consider you a friend and have these conversations, and it's just you continue to grow and flourish, and it's good to see. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ian. And before we wrap this up, I'd just like to show this book to your to your listeners and your watchers. Ian's book, Make a Living Designing Logos. You sent me this, and you wrote a lovely note in the start there, and yeah, I really appreciate that, Ian. So
yeah, I know that book probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you, because the advice that you shared in your early books was some of the inspiration that made me feel that I could be a logo designer if I wanted to be. When I started out, I didn't know what I was doing, but I've learned from as many people as I can, and you've been one of the key people, especially at the beginning. It's nice. It's nice to see that.
Thank you, Ian.
No worries at all.